自今年1月，英王室称凯特王妃接受了腹部手术。凯特至今的行踪一直被媒体甚至网络侦探捕风捉影。
They've always been exposed to prying cameras, whether it's paparazzi or whether it's staff cameramen belonging to newspapers.
The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present. And I look forward to being back when I'm able.
Nobody's going to like that very much, and what she does, she's very polite, she smiles, she comes across.
近期凯特的热搜度是特朗普的6倍，拜登的9倍。如今她终于现身，英国王室的信任危机能否就此消除
？Monarchy as a beacon of continuity and stability, and because they transcend politics, there's this sense that you're safe with them.
英主流媒体得王室通知消息称，请随时关注王室最新动态。这是否说明英国王室已准备好公开一些秘密
？When Kate was on the scene, she was being called Weighty Katie. Her and Pippa Middleton, her sister, were called the Wisterias because they were fragrant with a ferocious ability to climb.
邀各路权威解读英国王室成员的幕后故事。探秘双面皇室家族，揭开不为人知的王室秘密。今年2月5日，白金汉宫发布消息称，英国国王查尔斯3世在医院的诊断检查中被确诊患有癌症，他将推迟所有需要公开露面的活动。而在此前的今年年初，英国王储妃凯特因腹部手术住院，已经让关心王室的英国民众忧心。然而，相较于白金汉宫发布的消息，肯辛顿宫试图更多地保护王妃隐私，向公众透露的信息较少。加之此后，在2月末，威廉王子临时取消了出席自己的教父已故前希腊国王康斯坦丁的悼念仪式，外界不断猜测王室内部到底在发生着什么？种种传言在各大社交媒体疯转，这一系列疑问也愈发考验着英国王室。
Royal children have always been exposed to prying cameras, whether it's paparazzi or whether it's staff cameramen belonging to newspapers. That's par for the course.
I'm not sure the royal children particularly enjoy it, but it's just a royal rite of passage.
英国王室成员每年需要参加数千场公共活动，然而如今在职王室成员队伍仅有11人，其中只有7名核心成员需要全职履行王室职责。这包括已患病的国王查尔斯3世、76岁的王后卡米拉、威尔士亲王威廉王子、威尔士王妃凯特、已故女王的女儿73岁的长公主安妮。女王最小的儿子60岁的爱丁堡公爵爱德华王子和爱丁堡公爵夫人苏菲，这7个人中只有威廉和凯特的年龄在50岁以下。英国媒体称，鉴于目前的状况，能够参加公开活动的王室成员已经捉襟见肘。英国王室目前正面临着一场用人危机。登基不足1年的查尔斯国王不得不考虑为王室活动注入新鲜血液。
Who is Princess Alice, for example? Has anyone heard of her? What does Princess Michael of Kent do these days? Why do we need these people?
In the past, those titles would have meant something even if you didn't recognize them. I think these days, not recognizing them would cause most people to think, well, why are we still paying for them?
随着英国王室人员凋零，王室真空的现状很让英国政界头疼。特别是今年还将赶上英国大选，政治新闻网报道称，虽然英国王室的职能更多是礼仪性的，却能起到稳定人心的作用。以苏纳克为首的保守党政府必然期望局势越稳越好。报道还称，英国保守党的选民群体将王室成员的按时曝光视作国泰民安的象征。王室成员长期缺席，势必会影响选民情绪，从而影响到执政保守党的选情。
After the Queen goes, Charles says he wants to slim down royal family, which is him and Camilla, Kate and William, and their children with the rest of the royals off the payroll.
王室成员接受了君主拨款，便有了经济上的保障。在上一年的统计中，君主拨款的数额高达8600万英镑。王室的这些钱不是白拿的，他们有义务传播王室的良好形象， 因此，一些王室成员通常需要在部队中服役。
The military is a safe option for the royal family. There's no commercial prerogatives. You're kept out of the way. It's always been difficult for members of the royal family to go into business, to go into trade, because people always accuse you of cashing in on your name.
但已故女王最小的儿子爱德华王子曾在年轻时选择离开海军，去跟英国音乐剧作家安德鲁·韦伯共事，从此踏入了一片英王室从未涉足过的领域。
It's the lowest rung on the learning process of working in theatre, and he will have no status whatsoever. We will not be using him in any PR capacity, purely as an employee to learn the business.
I suppose it's difficult being the fourth son of the monarch. You don't really have a role. You have to create one for yourself.
爱德华的兴趣也的确是王室未知的领域。
And what he then seemed to think that he could do was to bring the stage to the royal family, put them on the stage. And clearly, as far as he was concerned, let's get rid of all the old cobwebs. Let's show how wonderfully entertaining we all are.
他计划以慈善的形式翻拍一个经典的淘汰赛节目。
The Duchess of York was first off the coach, bringing the royal family and their teams to Alton Towers. Prince Edward was already there to meet them, well into the spirit of the day, sporting a silly T-shirt.
Royal Knockout was an unmitigated disaster.
It was one of those things that, like, maybe on paper or in theory seemed like a good idea, and then as soon as it was on screen, it quickly became apparent what a bad idea it was.
相关视频现已被禁止传播，但肢体语言专家朱迪·詹姆斯仍能回忆起当时的影响。
It was dreadful for the public because the public wanted to see more of the royal family, and I remember when that was advertised, great, let's see them being funny and everything like that. But when you get what you ask for and it's awful, you know straight away, actually, no, I'd rather have them with their hands behind their back and not speaking too much.
随后，爱德华举办了新闻发布会，但于事无补。
First of all, I have to apologize if I go to sleep at the middle of this.
Media were not allowed to watch proceedings live. We had to watch it on television. And it was a cold day, it was in a tent, there were no refreshments. And Edward came in at the end of it and sat at a table, sort of slightly raised, and looked at the assembled crowd of media and said, well, what did you think of it?
And I know the captains have enjoyed themselves. I only hope that you've enjoyed yourselves. Have you?
You could have heard a pin drop.
Well, thanks for sounding so bloody enthusiastic. What have you been doing in here all day? Haven't you been watching it? Yeah. What did you think of it? Thanks.
I thought it was great.
The headline the next day was, "It's a walkout," which just about summed it up.
I think Edward had set himself up to be a champion in his own right. This was his star of the royal family. His brothers had been heroes, they'd been in the armed forces, etc. But he was going to do it theatrically and do this wonderful show that everybody would love him, and the royal family would say, oh no, Edward, you are now the most famous member of the royal family. And it didn't quite work out like that.
爱德华在影视行业出师不利，他只能转过头继续履行王室职责。
Properly, because you've got to be accountable. You've got to show that you're dutiful above all else, almost to the point sometimes where you've got to sacrifice your private life for duty. And that's a very difficult thing for many people. I mean, the royals are only human after all. It's no easier for them to do that than it would be for any of the rest of us who are not in the spotlight.
另一方面，若要审视王室的开销，他们的全球差旅费用是个很具争议的话题。
The prince doesn't pay for his trips to exotic places, but then he couldn't afford to. He hasn't been well off by royal standards, but today it gets better. He'll have a full £20,000 a year from the Queen's civil list for a start.
而谈及差旅费用，女王的二儿子安德鲁王子是个绕不开的人。
The Duke of York was nicknamed Air Miles Andy for his propensity to rack up private jet travel on jobs that some people suggested might not have been particularly useful to Britain.
I asked a parliamentary question after one particularly excessive year of travel by Prince Andrew as to what particular trade deals he had managed to put together in his role as trade envoy, the government couldn't name one.
但与此同时，他的开销却可以一笔笔算得很清楚。
Some of these trips were quite extraordinary in the cost. £100,000 or more for a flight to or trip to the United States, 30,000 for a visit to Japan. In the last year that he was in this official role, it is more than £600,000 in the year spent on travel costs alone.
I once went to Mexico for an interview that I did with him to mark his 50th birthday. There was a huge entourage, and to be fair, there's a massive kidnapping risk in Mexico City, but you've never seen a motorcade like it. And I did get the impression that Prince Andrew quite enjoyed the notion of being centre of attention and almost seeming presidential.
Most famously, he demanded that his valet bring with him a 6-foot ironing board. So you got the ludicrous situation of some royal lackey having to carry it out of the plane into the waiting Land Rover or whatever.
即便在经常细雨蒙蒙的英国老家，他也总是安排飞机出行。
He's become known as Air Miles Andy. This private jet is taking the Duke of York to Newcastle. Bad weather had grounded the royal helicopter. It was a reminder of repeated accusations of extravagance.
Did you have to go by private jet to Newcastle?
Yeah, because there was no other way of getting there and back, bearing in mind from what I was doing before and what I was doing afterwards.
Well, there was this sense as well that Prince Andrew kept on taking helicopters to go short distances and private jets when surely a commuter train, God forbid, would have sufficed. This idea of him being quite grandiose and dismissing the notion of taking scheduled flights because he was very important as the Queen's son sort of cast a cloud over everything that he was doing.
他在闲暇时光所做的事情也招致了非议。
There's one occasion when he went to Northern Ireland to Portrush when he played a golf match, and because it took a bit longer than expected, he was an hours late to be guest of honour at an event where he should have been attending in his royal capacity.
And I know for a fact that some of his aides had to take him aside and say, seriously, you cannot take the golf clubs on these trips. It's completely the wrong look. You're there to do an official job on behalf of the Queen, not enjoy 18 holes at St Andrews.
最终，伴随着越来越多批评的声音，2011年，安德鲁辞去了英国贸易特使的职务。有报道称，当时他的银行账户里有5700万英镑，这意味着他是第3富有的英王室成员。但后来，他和一位商业合作伙伴的交情为众人知晓，这给他的名声造成了难以估量的负面影响。
So understandably, Andrew has been told to step back from royal duties, to have essentially zero public presence because of the continuing allegations that hang over his head in relation to his relationship with Epstein.
尽管安德鲁坚称自己没做过任何不当行为，但他和哈里、梅根一样，都被免除了王室职务。被解除王室头衔是好是坏？有人将王室生活视为围城。
decide not to give their children the HRH title because it gives them more freedom.
甚至买文具、谈恋爱也被众目睽睽。
And we were told at that meeting that, in no uncertain terms, we couldn't speak to the press about him.
殿下头衔带来的是欢喜还是损失？ 凯特王妃近3个月没有公开露面，外界猜测众说纷纭。
It was dreadful for the public because the public wanted to see more of the royal family.
有些王室成员却很喜欢露面，甚至想搬出总统的派头。
There was a huge entourage, and I did get the impression that Prince Andrew quite enjoyed the notion of being centre of attention and almost seeming presidential.
批评指责越来越强烈，安德鲁王子最终引咎退居幕后。 媒体对威廉和哈里的痴迷，从他们的托儿所时代就开始了。
Prince William is an old hand. He went to this school for a year. The Princess of Wales made sure young Harry was centre stage for the well-practiced wave.
I'm not sure the royal children particularly enjoy it, but it's just a royal rite of passage.
2 hours later, the young prince left for home. He'd made a pair of binoculars and showed a joyous determination to beat the press at their own game.
此后的每一个第一天，狗仔都如影随形。
William and Harry started their schooling life at Wetherby Prep before moving on to Ludgrove and then going to Eton. There was an idea that Charles and Diana wanted a degree of localism towards their son's education because Charles had had such a miserable time being sent away to board at Gordonston. And I don't think Diana wanted the children to be too far away either.
Apparently, to tease these old Etonian advisors, she said, oh, I really think we should look at sending William and Harry to Holland Park Comprehensive. It's a big state school just around the corner, around the back of Kensington Palace. And of course, she didn't mean this, you know, but it absolutely terrified the courtiers because they thought she might actually do this. She was seen as a bit of a loose cannon.
伊顿公爵是王室的挚爱。2位王子都在这里接受了中等教育。
If you're a child in the royal family and you're hoping to grow up and go to an ordinary school, you can forget it because, like nannies and governesses, public school is just seen as an essential part of growing up as a royal.
They were probably teased a bit when they went to school because although they went to school as William Wales and Henry Wales or Harry Wales, people knew that they were both princes and Prince Charles was one day going to be king.
外界对2位王子的成绩有着很高的期待，但哈里似乎总在装傻充愣。
He experienced his parents' divorce, which would have had its own emotional trauma. His mother tragically and violently dies. That's another emotional trauma. At 17, he's called a pothead, so he's already rebelling. A lot like lots of different young people do. It's a developmental stage, saying, I don't want to follow my parents, I want to follow my peers.
从伊顿公学毕业时，哈里完成了2门高级证书考试，其中艺术拿了 B， 地理拿了 D。威廉则继续深造，去了远在苏格兰的圣安德鲁斯大学读书，这让这所大学的学生们惊喜不已。威廉有一位同学名叫海伦·麦卡德尔，他那时和日后的凯特王妃住在同一间宿舍。
Those of us who were residents in St Salvator's Hall were taken into the common room, and we were told at that meeting that, you know, in no uncertain terms, we couldn't speak to the press about him.
但威廉不是一个人入读的。
Prince William did have 2 security guards or bodyguards who were with him, and they stayed in the Hall of Residence. And actually, his 2 bodyguards were so sort of unassuming that for a long time, a lot of us just thought they were mature students. We didn't actually realize they were his bodyguards.
有时候，威廉想大步流星地走进文具店，买点笔记本之类的必需品。他很想能融入普通学生的群体中去，可惜这是不可能的。
You have, you know, lecture theatres absolutely packed out. People sort of craning their neck to try and get a look at Prince William.
为了隐姓埋名，他甚至还用过绰号。
Some people used to refer to Prince William as Steve as a nickname, and I think we used to refer to Prince William sometimes as P. Willie.
但第1学年结束后，他的假名就不管用了。
Prince William had been coming back with some of his friends, and he had stumbled and fallen into the bushes outside the Hall of Residence, and his bodyguards basically had to go in and retrieve him and pull him out and take him off to bed.
但保镖的营救任务还没有到此结束。
Some of the people whose bedrooms overlooked the front of the halls and overlooked these bushes had been, you know, taking photos outside of the window, and apparently the bodyguards came round to confiscate the film from their phones.
威廉也一直是舍友们八卦的对象。
So definitely in first year, everyone did notice that Kate and William spent an awful lot of time together. You would see him standing outside her room, maybe in the doorway, talking to her. You would see both of them coming and going from lectures together. You knew there was definitely a close friendship there.
毕业之前，凯特和威廉就开始了他们的恋爱。这份恋情获得了全家人的支持。
William Wales. This was a proud day for the family and an occasion with its own quirky traditions, like being patted on the head with a leather pouch containing a fragment of the trousers of a 16th century preacher. Peculiar, you said it. The perfect curtain raiser then to a royal life.
与此同时，哈利不出所料地放弃了学业，开始了军旅生活。
Even as a little boy, he'd dress up in his commando camouflage gear, and if you were waiting in the sitting room at Kensington Palace, you might see a little toy rifle come round the door first, followed by Prince Harry. He was, in a way, always wanted to be a career soldier.
For the first time in his life, he realised he was really good at something. Much had been made of his academic record by himself, actually. He used to laugh and joke that he wasn't academic and couldn't get good marks in anything.
哈利虽然没上过大学，但还是在桑德赫斯特军事学院取得了一席之地，并入选了精英课程，受训成为阿帕奇直升机的副驾驶员。始终在聚光灯下成长的王子们，在结婚成家并为人父后，给自己的孩子们做出了不同的人生规划。
Some royals may decide not to give their children the HRH title because it gives them more freedom to make connections with other people, to come across as more relatable, and also takes away that kind of burden of responsibility and worry about how am I going to be treated differently or how am I going to be received if I have this title.
查尔斯国王的妹妹安妮公主没有让自己的2个孩子彼得·菲利普斯和扎拉·菲利普斯继承王室头衔。
The Queen talked to Princess Anne's children, not about the baby, but about a new puppy.
It's called Dash. Dash. And you know the word you use when you're cross. Dash. It comes out frightfully well as a dog's name, see?
In the case of somebody like Zara Phillips, not having the title has meant she's been freer to do what she likes, although she hasn't been able to enjoy the financial trappings of royal life. Yes, she's not short of a few bob, and obviously Princess Anne can help her out with money, but she doesn't receive any public money and never has. Prince Harry has looked at Zara and Peter Phillips's upbringing, realised that they're not shackled by the trappings of royal life because they don't have titles, and that's influenced his and Meghan's decision to not give Archie a title.
不过从长远角度来看，放弃殿下头衔可能会带来巨大的损失。
If you're classified as His Royal Highness or Her Royal Highness, HRH initials in front of your name, that's actually very important. It means you qualify for public support, whether it's travel or whether it's security or anything else. When Princess Diana divorced, she had that taken away and found herself without any support whatsoever. But the fact that Harry has kept his, although he says he won't use it, means he does qualify for support. I'm very sympathetic to Harry in a sense that he found it quite difficult to fit in with the royal family, which is rather starchy, and those who are in any way imaginative like he is, or his mother was, quickly find themselves out in a limb.
哈里绕开了王室的礼仪准则，那么未来的国王夫妇是否也会采取一些非传统措施呢？
I think there is going to have to be a discussion when it comes to Prince George's schooling, because royal parents are informed by their own experience. William really enjoyed Eton, so no doubt wants the same for his own sons. Equally, I think Kate enjoyed the co-ed environment at Marlborough College.
几代王室成员都曾光顾马尔伯勒学校，它和公立综合学校有着天壤之别。
Schools love the idea of having a royal there, and they probably all vie for the idea of trying to coax a royal into their establishment. But at the end of the day, it's the parents who decide. And the parents decide off the back of whether the child likes it or not. So it's not a done deal.
Kate and William are, by all accounts, they're just like normal parents, whatever that means. They're very affectionate.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge really appear to have stepped up to the plate.
The institution has learnt that it's very important, if members of the royal family have children, they should be allowed to have that quality time in the early years of the child's upbringing, to be there for them, to be there in the morning, to be there at bedtime, to be there to pick them up from school.
Also, if you look beyond Prince William, and I appreciate that's some time away, but you see Prince George and Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis lined up. So that's the next generation of monarchy. We don't know what the monarchy is going to look like by then, and it could be even more modern than it is now.
这可能就是英国王室直至今日还颇具影响力的秘诀。他们愿意在遵循传统的同时，用现代人能够理解的方式，稳步地与这个时代同行。